Okay, we're live. I think everything is working. So we'll start in a couple of minutes at 6. No, Demawaro, how you doing? Well, Kristen, I'm glad you're reading my book and liking it. Good.
It's 6 o'clock.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so this evening we're at Saṃyojana number 3. To recapitulate the basis of this series, the Saṃyojanas are 10 particular defilements. The word means fetters or bonds. They are those defilements which keep us within the sphere of samsara. They bind us to samsaric existence. And the 4 stages of awakening, beginning with Sotapanna through to Arahant, they break the fetters, they annihilate the fetters so that they no longer arise in the mind stream. The first 3 fetters are sometimes called the lower fetters. They are the ones that are eliminated at the moment of stream entry, Sotapanna, which is the first glimpse of Nibbana, and represents a purification of the view. So all these first 3 fetters revolve in one way or another around ditthi, around the view. And we've already dealt with Sakkaya Ditthi and Silabhata Paramasa, commonly translated as personality view and rites and rituals clinging. And we discussed how these translations are not, particularly the latter, are not really adequate to explain the condition, which is something we always have to be cautious with in studying Dhamma. If you just take the common English translations at face value, often you'll get a misleading idea. They should only be used really as markers, and you should do your own study and learn what the various technical terms in Pali actually mean. Remember that no 2 languages are ever fully isomorphic, meaning they don't map into each other one for one. No translation from one language to another can ever be perfect. And when you have a language at such a cultural and temporal distance as Pali and English, the problems are going to be greater. So that said, we come to Viccikicchā, the 3rd fetter, which is the common translation of is Sceptical Doubt, although there's a common alternative also, uncertainty. And that was the one actually used by Nyanamoli in translating the Visuddhimagga. So you'll see it under that guise if you dip into that book, the English Path of Purification. And uncertainty is actually a better translation than skeptical doubt. The root of the word kichata, from the verb kachati, means to think wrongly or to wander in thought, to go awry in thought. So it means uncertainty. It's a wavering of mind, so it's an enemy of samadhi. It's the type of mind that is unsettled as to view. It goes back and forth. It's unclear, and it also implies, I think, a desire in the mind for certainty, but an inability to attain it. So let's go back to the idea of doubt and why that's problematic as a translation. A doubt in English has somewhat of a range of meanings, not just uncertainty, but also it could imply a kind of openness of mind, which is actually a positive thing. There's a Zen saying, little doubt, small enlightenment; big doubt, big enlightenment. And that doesn't mean Viccikicchā. It doesn't mean uncertainty or wavering of mind, this sort of anxious back and forth. But it means having an open mind, which is important for spiritual progress, that one is open to new experience, new exploration, new concepts, and not to be rigid, dogmatic, and fixed. I think is one of the pitfalls along the path that practitioners fall into is closing off their progress by deciding that they've got something figured out because they have a neat word definition that they've come across or that they've devised on their own. And particularly if it's in Pali or Sanskrit, that's even more impressive. But what happens when you've decided that you really understand something and you don't have to examine it anymore is you don't examine it anymore. You don't progress in that direction. You've sealed yourself off. But to hold the mind open to to new possibilities, and to hold a question in the mind. This is the healthy form of doubt, to have a question mark mind. Now, often in spiritual life, having a well-formed question is more useful and more progressive in your practice than having an answer, because you open yourself up to experience. So we're not talking about doubt in that sense with Viccikicchā. That's why I actually prefer the translation uncertainty. So the person who suffers from Viccikicchā will be going back and forth in the mind, unable to decide, is this right or is that right? And they're unable to be at peace with not knowing and waiting to find out. So they cling to one view or another, and it often shifts and changes, and it causes agitation and anxiety in the mind. It's an unsettled mind. And this can manifest in different ways. One of the common ways it manifests for meditators is doubt or uncertainty about the practice itself. Am I doing it correctly? And instead of just doing the practice, one's endlessly fussing in the mind about, is this the correct way? Ajahn so-and-so said to do it this way, and Sayadaw such and such said to do it that way, and which is correct, and I don't know. Instead of just surrendering yourself to the practice and doing it. There are stories in variations of a common theme that I've seen similar stories in from Thai sources and Tibetan and even Christian sources. The story of the simple person, a peasant or a farmer, backwoodsman of some kind, illiterate, unlearned, who goes to see the great master. And the great master is surrounded by his eminent disciples, and they're discussing some abstract points of Abhidhamma, and they're getting all intellectual. And he doesn't really want to waste time with this country bumpkin. So when this fellow is humbly asking him for the teaching, he says, "Oh yeah, okay, just go sit down, sit quietly, and watch your breath. See me in a few years. So let me just go and watch your breath," or something like that. Some very simple, immediate instruction like that. But this fellow has so much faith, and he has no uncertainty in his mind. The great master told me to watch my breath, and that that is precious teaching. I won't deviate from that. So he goes and does that, and of course, in no long time at all, he attains to all kinds of advanced states of jhana or enlightenment. And the sole basis of that is faith, a strong certainty. And I've also, from personal experience, I could say that over the years of watching meditators, that I've asked myself, well, why is it some meditators seem to make good progress relatively quickly, and others can struggle for years and they don't get anywhere? And I think the decisive factor is a degree of faith in the practice. Just doing it, just surrendering to the practice and doing it. And if there's doubt in the mind as to the correct practice, that will hinder the meditator. And if he just surrenders to the practice, that it'll sort itself out in time. And it is skillful to try and clarify the practice, by study or by talking with a teacher. But the important factor is to just do it, just surrender to the practice and let it carry you. And that's a certainty, that's faith, that's saddha. One can also have uncertainty about oneself, and that's also a fairly common problem. People have a low opinion of themselves. They don't think they can do it. But if they have confidence that this is within my grasp, I can, with work, I can achieve it, then they can go forward. But ultimately, I think Viccikicchā, in this particular context of the three fetters, is referring to existential or metaphysical uncertainty, the uncertainty of the correctness of the dhamma itself, and particularly, I would say, uncertainty about the third noble truth, that there is an end to suffering. And this is a crux. This is a somewhat of a paradox and an issue in practice of Buddhism. The third noble truth is all about nibbana and realizing the unconditioned. And the unconditioned is, by definition, it's ineffable, meaning it cannot be expressed or explained. It's beyond logic, it's beyond words. So this creates a dilemma for the beginner, in that you're told when you take up the Buddhist path that you have to do all this purifying of yourself and put in the time and put in the effort, and the end result will be realization of nibbana. Well, what's nibbana? Well, we can't tell you. It's not a secret, but we literally can't tell you. It's not expressible. You know? And before having seen it for oneself, nibbana cannot be even imagined. Anything you think about it is going to be wrong. So it requires faith that there is such a state, there is something other than the conditioned. So this is, I think, the critical point where faith or saddha is required in Buddhism. It's not really a faith-based religion. It's an experiential religion. You're not required to dogmatically believe all kinds of things, but if you don't have faith in the possibility of the unconditioned, then what's the point? You can't really go anywhere. So, and if the faith is weak, in difficult moments, it'd be easy to just give up. And this is also why the stream winner has made an end of Viccikicchā, because the stream winner has glimpsed nibbana. So although the initial experience of stream entry is extremely limited experience of nibbana compared to the higher attainments, it's still a glimpse, and there can be no longer any doubt in the mind that there is an unconditioned. There is something other than this, than the conditioned. So that doubt is ended forever. So there's no longer any uncertainty about the essence of the dhamma. Now, it's still possible for a stream enter. It has not ended ignorance and is not certainly very far from any kind of omniscience. So they can still have a wavering mind about certain technical points of dhamma, and there can be areas of uncertainty. But the essence of the Four Noble Truths is clear, is no longer in doubt. It's certain. So the faith of a stream winner is perfect. And the stream winner no longer falls into false view, miccaditthi. So this is another aspect that we can talk about that relates to stream entry and relates to Viccikicchā, is the three views. Now the Buddha in the Brahmajala Sutta of the Digha Nikaya, the Buddha talks about 62 wrong views, but that's a very complex scheme, but it boils down to two fundamental wrong views. And elsewhere in the suttas, he does express it in that way. The two wrong views are extreme views. One is annihilationism and one is eternalism. So one is the annihilationist view, Uccedavada, is the modern iteration of that is materialism or physicalism. It's basically the idea that we are the physical body, and at death we're completely cut off and annihilated. And the eternalist view is the view that we are in essence an eternal, immortal Atman, or soul, or spirit, or jiva, however you want to call it. that continues from life to life unchanged, and is unchanging and indestructible. And we know many variations of that historically and at present. And in the world, those two views are very much contrary to each other, and often intellectual opponents, ideological opponents. Materialists versus theists is a common theme in intellectual history. But from the Buddhist point of view, they're both wrong. The Buddhist dhamma is the middle way between the two extreme views. And it takes its basis on dependent origination, which in its simplest iteration means that things arise according to causes and conditions, not otherwise. So there's no arbitrary arising and there's no randomness. And both of the extreme views, when they're analyzed, they fall back on some degree of denial of causality. In the materialist view, you have to, in the end, rely on random arising. Things are just so because they're just so. There's no reason why. It's just, that's the way it is. And in eternalism, you fall back on the will of God, the arbitrary will of the Creator. So there's an arbitrary first cause. Whereas the dependent origination, there's no arbitrary, there's no random factor. Everything is according to causes and conditions. And with the purification of view, this is another sign of stream entry. It's no longer possible for a stream winner to fall into wrong view in this sense. Well, of course, he can be mistaken about all kinds of things, but he can never believe in eternalism or annihilationism. They'll no longer make sense to his mind, because the stream entry is a purification at the cognitive level. There's no longer any possibility of the mind holding those views. They seem nonsensical to someone who has glimpsed nibbana and therefore had a context to put samsara in. So this is another aspect of the certainty of a stream winner. Whereas for a patujana, one who has not yet reached stream entry, there's always the possibility of falling into Viccikicchā, or uncertainty about these views. Well, maybe there is no rebirth. Well, maybe there's an eternal soul. I don't know. I'm back and forth. I can't decide. That's Viccikicchā. Of course, there's also many individuals who are firmly dogmatically fixed in one of the wrong views, and that's not quite Viccikicchā, but it's still a serious impediment to the spiritual life. If you are dogmatically fixed either on materialism or eternalism, then you've kind of eliminated any possibility of realization until you clarify that or abandon that attachment. So to summarize, the first three fetters all revolve around purification of view. Saṃyojana is the fetter of cognitively believing in a self. And we'll see as we go on to the middle and higher fetters that there are deeper senses of self, but the stream winner has purified a sense of self at the cognitive level, or the level of view. And Silabbata Paramasa is the reliance on mechanical procedure and turning the dhamma practice into a ritual or kind of rote exercise. And finally, Viccikicchā is uncertainty, the wavering of mind, the mind wandering from one view to another and not having certainty or faith. So I'll stop there. And next, we'll take questions in a moment. Next time, we're going to go on to the two middle fetters, which are sensual desire and ill will, and we'll do sensual desire next time. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see the first question here. Venerable Ajahn, is indulging in sensuality a palpable manifestation of doubt, even after conceptual understanding of wrong view? Not necessarily. It can be, as we'll talk about with the middle fetters, it's possible to have right view but still act in a wrong way, just because the impulses of the being, the appetites and desires, really have nothing to do with concepts and view. They can override that at times. Can you explain how upadana, clinging, gives rise to bhava, becoming? I've always been confused about this. Maybe I don't fully understand upadana and bhava, so maybe you can help. Yeah, okay, it's kind of off topic, but we can answer that briefly here. Upadana, clinging, there's a good argument to be made that a better translation of that is actually fuel for becoming. It's a more literal translation. It's the middle stage between craving and becoming. And with craving, tanha, there's just a very primitive, unelaborated or unarticulated desire. No, I want that. Gimme, just a movement of the mind towards a desired object. With clinging, it becomes more of a project, that the process becomes more complex, and it's not only just a impulsive movement of the mind towards the object. There's now a kind of scheming to attain the object. And when you have that happening, that necessarily creates sets up a dynamic of the possessed and the possessor, so self and other. So here is the beginning of the creation of a self, and that's fully manifested in the next stage, bhava, or becoming. So you come into being through your desires being articulated and turning into a self and other relationship. Okay, so a bunch of questions after that. I gotta scroll back to chat. Okay, here's the next one. Can Sotapanna change lineage after stream entry, such as Theravada to Zen? The result of overcoming the third fetter should be confidence in the Buddha, not in any particular sect. Yeah, I don't see why not, actually. That the stream winner would never adhere to any doctrine that denied not self or the core idea of dependent origination and so forth, but to then take interest in a different flavor of Buddhism, I don't really see that as impossible for a stream winner. Is the Buddhist view of dependent origination, is there a first cause, or is there no concept of beginning? The Buddha himself, that's a ancient question. The Buddha himself refused to answer that. He said that possibility of understanding a first beginning. It's not possible for your mind to go there. It's useless. So he left the question unanswered, but the Buddhist tradition after him very strongly leaned towards the idea of no beginning. And this is actually explicitly stated by Buddhaghosa in the commentaries, that samsara is without beginning. And the idea makes logical sense, given the premises of the dependent origination, that everything must arise from a cause. So no matter how far back in time you go to moment X, there's going to be a moment X minus 1. And you'll never find a first cause, because if there were a first cause, that cause itself would be uncaused and would violate the principle of universal causality, no random arising. So the strong bias of the Buddhist tradition in all schools, I think, has been towards the idea that samsara is without beginning. Are we to wait until achieving stream entry to struggle against the fetters, or should we be struggling against them all along? Oh yes, you should definitely be working on attenuating the fetters. That's how you attain to stream entry. You wear away at the fetters as best you can, and they won't be completely eliminated until the moment of stream entry, but then you make stream entry possible by weakening the fetters. And the mind can approach to the state of say understanding not self, which would be overcoming Sakkaya Ditthi. The mind can approach to that like a mathematical asymptote. You can get closer and closer and closer, vanishingly close, but never get quite there until the moment of stream entry. What is the difference between fetters and hindrance? Fetters is the English word that's used to translate Saṃyojana, which is the list of 10 that relate to the stages of awakening. Hindrances usually translates Nivarana, which is a list of 5 that relate to obstacles to attaining jhana. So they're all defilements. They have specific applications. And some of them overlap. The 2 middle fetters are also nivaranas. Isn't uncertainty a prerequisite to confirmed confidence or faith? Could one maintain that they were always certain? No, you can't. You always begin with uncertainty. The idea is to try and find that faith or certainty. Could you possibly please describe how the first glimpse of unconditioned or nirvana is? No, I couldn't. Sorry. That's the whole point. Are the 3 lower fetters destroyed all at once, resulting in the experience of stream entry, or is there an experience of destruction of each progressively? No, I would say they all go at once. They're all related. Would you consider the view that Sāvaka Arahants can come back and teach people with psychic powers a form of eternalism, Ajahn Mun? Yeah, that's definitely not Orthodox Theravada, and I'm not aware that Ajahn Mun disciples claim that he came back and taught them psychically. I know that Ajahn Lee's disciples claim that, but they say he was not an arahant, he was an anagami, which wouldn't be outside the Orthodox Theravada view. How can I practice Buddha Nusati? You contemplate the characteristics of the Buddha. If you want a more complete answer, I did write an essay on how to practice Buddha Nusati you can find on my website. Ajahn, are there alterations between each rebirth drastic. For example, going from very bright and wise to stupid and dull, from internal happiness to bliss to sorrow and misery. No, generally that's not the pattern. Or the question goes on, are there changes that are kind of smooth and the adjacent lives are somewhat similar in their quality? Seems to be the more typical pattern when we have stories and examples in the texts about multiple lives. It seems to be a movement, like someone will go to hell, and when they're finally finished their time in hell and be reborn human, they're reborn in a miserable condition, like they just barely make it to being human, and in some horrible, miserable condition as a human. Or someone falling from the Dewa realm might end up in a very luxurious condition as a human. But it is possible, that's the kind of the more normal course, but it is possible for quite radical shifts, and there are examples of that too, of being born from an animal state as a frog to being a Dewa, for example. So it's quite, there's no really fixed rule, but it does seem to be the more common progress is from similar to similar, and steps up and down one step at a time rather than big jumps. Can a Sotapanna speak harsh words? Yeah, that would be possible. The Sotapanna is also said to have a purified morality, because one of the defining factors of stream winner is that they can no longer be reborn in a lower realm. So the gates of hell are shut for me, is declared by stream winner in the canon. So that means they would never commit any karma that's so serious it would cause a lower rebirth, but they can have minor breaches of precepts like that. It's possible a stream winner could speak harsh words. Should I try to renounce this, but then I'm afraid I'll be digging a lot of shallow holes, as they say. I'm not sure what you're talking about renouncing. I missed the first part of that because the chat's moving too quickly. I have to go up. Sorry, let me go up on the chat and see the first half of that question. I found myself somewhat attached to practicing meditation the way I learned it in the Goenka tradition of observing body sensation. Sounds like attachment to rites and rituals. Well, no, it's subtle. It's possible to take any meditation and turn it into a rite and ritual. To be dogmatically fixed on a technique. But on the other hand, the other side of that is that these techniques are skillful means. They're useful practices, or they wouldn't have survived in the tradition. So you pick up one of these techniques like Mahasi or Goenka techniques and practice it seriously for a long time. That in itself is not rite and ritual clinging. But then if you become dogmatic about it and are completely unwilling to deviate from it, to try something different from time to time, or to allow the mind actually to release from any practice at some point in the meditation, that you have to just set the mind free. But to stick to the tradition and work with it is, as long as one doesn't become rigid and dogmatic, it is a very useful discipline. You can go a long way with it. Is there any comparison between the three great marks and the first three fetters? No, I don't think there's a direct connection there. Not every list with the same numbers has a crossover like that. If this is off topic, please forgive. Does the recipient of dana incur karmic debt? For example, learning from your lectures, is there an analogous concept of guru dakshina in Buddhism? No, not in Theravada Buddhism. There certainly is in like in the Thai forest tradition. There's a strong reverence for teachers, but it's not anywhere the same as a kind of guru worship. And there should be a sense of gratitude for those that have taught us along the way. But it can become, if you base your whole faith in a teacher, that's problematic too. That can become a kind of false view. Can the factors of greed, hatred, and delusion be seen as equating to the first three fetters? No. The first three fetters all revolve around the delusion. Greed and hatred come in with the middle fetters. How important is it to have a teacher to guide one? I've been practicing off and on for several years. I'm not sure I'm making much progress. Are you taking on new students? Well, I don't know what you imagine that would entail. I'm always open to helping people and answering questions. I'm not looking for disciples as such. I have no interest in that. It's too much of a burden. And I think it's useful to have some guidance. It can certainly, if you have guidance from a good teacher, it can certainly ease your path, shorten your path, can save you from making mistakes. But you still have to do it on your own. There's still, in the end, you have to make your own way. Is getting a crystal like nimitta after 3 days of meditation normal or expected? Well, it's possible. It's a nimitta is a mind-created object that can arise in meditation, and if you're able to hold a nimitta steady in the mind, it can be a useful way of conducive way of getting into jhana. Okay. What is the style of the Buddhist Nagarjuna? Well, he was a great Mahayana philosopher who taught a very profound work on the nature of emptiness. Yeah, I don't know what more to say about. I don't know what you mean by his style. Okay, so seem to be kind of winding down. So we'll next time we'll be doing the fetter of sensual desire, and talking about the middle fetters. It's a couple more questions here. Let's just see what it is. If you're seated, your view is seated in emptiness, not self, and dependent arising, and you're not wavering towards eternalism or annihilationism. If you find yourself wandering those ways, then that's the sign of the fetter of Viccikicchā. is the seeing dependent origination the same, equal to seeing the Four Noble Truths? Yeah, it's equivalent. They're like, it's like approaching the Dhamma from two different directions, but it's very equivalent. Okay. Okay, so I'll take my leave now, and thank you very much for coming. And we'll see you again next time.